Welcome to the Global Tech Leaders Podcast, where we help business leaders and individual contributors with actionable insights to hit their number and figure out the nuances of truly operating a business globally today, squeezing the essence of the lessons learned from the planet's top tech leaders. This is your guide to joining the fast track to global market scaling.
So, folks, welcome to today's show. We are joined by a very significant member of our team here at Single Focus Talent, a long overdue podcast recording, none other than Lisa Swartz, who is an executive virtual assistant, a founder at Taflynn Worx. Taflynn Worx does research, recruitment, executive admin, social media management to remote clients anywhere in the world, offering excellent organization skills, deep insight into business procedures, and exceptional communication skills. I can attest to that. With 13 years of experience from being a senior coordinator, office manager, executive PA, she oversaw many duties such as recruitment, social impact, and managing executive schedules. She is also the president of the Intrepid Chapter at BNI Business Network International. Welcome, Lisa.
Well, thank you so much, Ross. I have to say it feels a bit weird to be on the side of the screen, but I'm humbled. Thank you for having me.
No, it's a real pleasure, I suppose. Just to give our listeners a bit of background, Lisa is the engine behind our engine. So she helps make everything work for us. I'm a very, very big believer in always be firing yourself. And Lisa is the person who keeps me accountable to that. She makes sure that I am maximizing the processes within the business and taking care of the strategy and making sure that the kind of plates in the air that are spinning don't fall and that the machine works in which it's best optimized. I suppose there's two ways of looking at this. When I founded this company a number of years ago, I knew we had a market in the tech space globally. You know, we started out in Dublin, we broadened our focus to Europe, we're working across the US now, and I suppose I knew there was a market for what we did, but it's very, very easy as a self-employed person to have this natural tendency to say, I'll just do that, I'll make it happen, etc. And all you've really done is created a job for yourself, and that's not what we're about. We're about building an asset and building a business. And Lisa has really been able to come into the fold and take ownership of things, which I welcome hugely, and allow our team to focus in on specialities. And I think that's the key part, is that everyone needs to be a specialist and not a generalist. So I suppose, Lisa, if you could just tell us a bit about what drove you to become an executive assistant, do what you do, and then share a bit about the impact you've made with us, because that's what makes me excited. Just tell our listeners about your story, if you would.
For sure. Well, my story is not maybe as exciting as many of the stories that I've heard, but I'll share mine.
Too humble.
I have always been in administration. I've always kind of filled similar roles, from PAs, executive PAs, senior coordinators, office manager. And it really stems from the first job I ever had, which my dad actually got me straight out of high school. I actually worked at a construction business that he worked at. My dad's been in construction his whole life. And I managed to get a part-time admin job. And I immediately fell in love with organizing, creating systems, putting things in place, creating efficient processes, enabling people to save time so they can focus on the actual work. So I fell in love with it at a very young age, around 1920. So it's kind of been the majority of my career. I've played around with some online trading, played around with some retail, some sales here and there. But generally, my experience is in business administration, executive admin. And I've done that for the majority of my working career. And a few years ago, I would say maybe 5 years ago, I heard about this thing called virtual assistant. And at the time, I was actually an executive PA to a CEO. And I heard this concept, did some research, and I was like, it sounds a little too simple, a little bit scary. I couldn't possibly go out on my own and do what I'm doing here. Surely it's not that easy. And then a couple of years ago, about 2 years ago, I actually was retrenched from a company that was kind of struggling at the time. And then I told myself, this is my gap, this is my chance to do what I do, but do it virtually. That way I can service multiple clients at the same time versus having one job and just being an employee, So that's kind of the thinking behind it. So I've been a virtual assistant for 2 years now, running my own business, working with people all over the world. And I truly love it. I truly, truly love it. I feel what I do is actually manage time management, and then building relationships. For me, that's the core of what I actually do. And then everything else is just the tasks and the work and the duties that come along with it, But I believe what I do is actually I manage people's time, and I fill in the gaps so that they can refocus time and energy on the business strategy, whether it may be bringing in new clients, working on growing the team, whatever it may be. Every small business owner reaches a point where they're like, I cannot do it on my own, and that's kind of where they start looking for me. Or for us, I would say. I'm actually building a nice network of virtual assistants at the moment. So that's when they come out looking for us. Admin, sometimes it's treated as a lousy job, a lousy task. That's just the stigma that's connected to it. But it's so important, Ross. It is vital to a business, actually. If you don't have your administration in order, there's a huge ripple effect. You end up wasting hours and hours and hours trying to catch up. And what's cool about virtual assistants is that you can either have full coverage. Let's say, for example, you run a business where you need someone to be on the clock 24/7. You can hire a virtual assistant in South Africa, one in the US, and one in Australia. You can be making money 24 hours of the day. So that's a really cool aspect as well of being a virtual assistant. Another cool aspect is it saves money in the essence of you don't have to employ someone, pay them for all these benefits, pay them for leave days and all those kinds of things. Whereas you just pay for the work that is getting done and nothing else. So it's cool. It's flexible. It gives people that trust that I know that when you do my work, you focus on nothing else. It also speaks to productivity. Sometimes when you have a team, an office full of people, you can't manage, even if you try to micromanage, which is not great, but I mean, you can't manage how much productivity you are getting out of the team. You can't. You can try your best, you can have KPIs, you can have whatever you want to have, but you're not guaranteed that person is spending 8 hours of their working day or whatever the working day may be, completely focused and dedicated to your work. There's distractions. Somebody wants to go for the chat. I mean, if you're a smoker, you're going to go out for a smoking break as a whole group, all these little things. And with virtual assistants, they're based in their home office, or perks are you can work anywhere in the world. But chances are they're based in their home office and they're completely dedicated and focused. So yeah, that's what I feel I actually do in a nutshell.
Yeah, I think, just to give people some context, it's a beneficial relationship for us both. It works very, very well. I think, for me, it's probably the area I struggle in the most. Is I'm a relatively organized person.
I can vouch for that.
Until I met you. And then I was like, okay, there's another level here that I hadn't contemplated. I was always one of these sorts of guys who lived by the mantra of it's not in the calendar, it doesn't exist. And then that served me very, very well because we only have a certain number of hours in the day. But there's all of this other work that's vital to what we do around the scheduling of the calendar, appointments for our candidates, speaking with net new clients, making sure CRM is timely, up to date, and giving us the data, because our data is what we present back to our clients in terms of what's in the marketplace. And if we don't have that, we're nowhere, quite frankly.
Yeah.
I suppose what's been for you some of the learnings that you've had for really well-run companies that you've been a part of working for the CEO, and what mistakes do you see, I suppose, as well, for kind of young companies trying to make it but just haven't gotten a handle of this? What's your sense of those two worlds, Lisa?
A few things hop into my brain. Firstly, I'd say with these businesses, the CEOs either want to do everything and they struggle to delegate and to kind of hand things over. And then they also struggle to trust people, to trust them to do as good of a job as they would do. So that's definitely two things I see very, very common. People treat their work like their baby. That's how I treat my business, and for sure you treat your business the same way. It's personal. It's business, but it's personal. It's your baby. And so I get that, so from my perspective, I need to be sensitive towards that. I need to be conscious of the fact that it is hard to let go. It's hard to trust someone else to take over certain things. It's hard to just give someone passwords, for example, a simple thing, but it's not that simple when you need to talk about it and now you need access to things. It's hard to trust someone with things like that. It's hard to trust that people treat your clients the way you would treat your clients. So I think trust is a big thing, a really, really big thing. Like I said, it's personal, and so people struggle to really give that off. But like I said, I'm patient. I take the time to build a relationship. I take time to build the trust. And if I need to prove myself, I'm okay with that. If it needs to be a trial period of where we just check things out, that's okay. If I need to do some free work for you, hop on some calls so that we can gain some trust in the relationship, like I'm okay with that. So I would say the two common things in those worlds would be letting go of responsibility, delegation, and then just trust, trusting someone you don't know to do a good job.
Yeah, that's true. So I suppose one of the kind of fascinating things for me is that we've never met each other, but we've spoken, I don't know, we speak many times a day. We're always on Slack to each other. You're a vital part of my world. I think it's a very interesting dynamic. Have you seen any pushback with that? Because I'm a virtual guy, kind of born global, born digital nomad, so to speak. But do you see any of that where they're like, I can't possibly hire somebody I've never met before? Have you seen that?
I have. It's actually quite common. I think it depends on, you and I have been working together for 2 years now. We've never been in the same room, and I consider you family. I feel like I know you well. So it's really cool. It's interesting how you can build a relationship through voice, through voice meetings and visual meetings and things like that, But I would say it depends on what part of the world we're talking about. I'm in South Africa, Cape Town, South Africa, to be specific. And locally, it's a new thing, this virtual assistant thing, offering services from home, offering remote services. It's a new thing. And people are terrified. They're like, I couldn't possibly trust you to do my work. I can't see what you are doing. I can't watch you all day long. How do I trust that you're sticking to your word, kind of a thing? So it depends on what part of the world we're talking about. When I meet people from all over Europe, Croatia, England, Ireland, it doesn't matter where it is, it's a common thing to be a digital nomad. It's common to have a business that you're running from home. Whereas in South Africa, it's a new thing. Australia also very common to outsource your services, to outsource some of your roles, because it saves the business money in the long run. For example, if you're based in Australia, everything in Australia is really, really expensive for most parts of Australia. Even just the services, having a PA, you won't believe what a PA is meant to earn in Australia, market related, I would say. And then they would outsource someone maybe based in, I know someone in Australia who outsourced the accounting to somebody in India, and she was earning, to her, it was a great rate. She was earning good money. She was hitting her goals. And for the Australian client, she was like, I'm saving money. I don't need to hire someone locally, So it just depends on what part of the world you're talking about, how up to speed people are with remote world, the virtual world, the digital nomad world. So locally, I'll be honest with you, I do struggle. That is why I don't particularly target South Africa at the moment, although I have started to build some new relationships. But generally, it's a new thing. But with COVID in play, people are being forced to catch up quickly. So people are catching on, and it's now starting to become a norm. But for the last couple of years, it's very new and shocking to people. They can't understand how I can trust you to do the work, but I cannot watch you do the work, which is the culture that they are used to. Micromanaging, having everyone in the same space all day long, and kind of ensuring that person's doing the work. So yeah, Europe is we're catching up with different parts of Europe. It's been an old thing, to be a digital nomad, to trace somewhere, to pack up your laptop and go to a different city because it's hotter there, and spend the season there and just work from wherever you want to work. So depends on where we're speaking of.
Yeah, it's phenomenal, actually. It's It's something I see a little bit as well. It blows my mind, my parents' mind, for example, that I work with folks who I've never met before, right?
Yeah.
I've always had customers I've never met before. My father can't understand this, where he's like, no, you need to shake their hand, you need to look them in the eye and travel around the country. You get it a little bit as well when you're trying to explain to people, even my own age, where I'm kind of just about a millennial, and you speak to people and they're like, oh, so where's your target market? And I'm like, well, it's anywhere. And they assume it's in your home country. And I'm like, no, it's not really, because you know, we have a phenomenal market here. Don't get me wrong. You know, it's big, and it's probably big enough, but it's not really all of what I'm interested in, because of what we do is specific. And you know, we've just now, as of last week, we've surpassed 5 million people. And we were just under that quite recently. But, you know, the island next door to us, the city of London, has 9 million people. That's over 2 times our whole country population. The US has 12 times the population of 6 times the population of the UK. And the UK is 12 times the population of us. Yeah, which is crazy. The only thing I find a challenge to deal with is time zone. So, you know, Australia really would be a challenge for us. And we've done a bit of work there, but we have somebody locally look after that for us. I think, you know, the biggest advantage, I've worked with virtual assistants and outsourced centers. I've set them up myself. I've set them up in India, for example, for telcos in my career. I've been out to APAC, etc. And I've brought some of them back as well. And it wasn't actually, one of the striking things for me is it wasn't a cost thing. Because we actually did calculations when we brought a call center back to Ireland from India, well, for a function, that it was actually wildly more productive to bring it to Ireland than it was in India, because the technology gave us a 3.5x uplift in our efficiency metrics, meaning we could cover more ground in one day with calls than we could from remote dial, like individually punching in keys into a phone. That didn't work. So I've seen both sides of it. I think, you know, for me, it's all about the people. And there are local cultural nuances and such as well. I think the major advantage South Africa has is you've native English, right? So, and you're also on our time zone somewhat. So I know we were talking before, and there's a bit of a shift in the middle of the year where it's +2 hours versus +1 hour. And you were like, is it not summer where you are? Is it not winter where you are? Is it not cold? I'm like, I'm confused. I don't know. I'm not sure. But yeah, we're a whole hemisphere away from each other. We're 12 hours. I've done that flight to Cape Town, by the way. It's 12 hours straight from London. And but there's no jet lag because it's straight down, right? And I think that's one of the major advantages you have. I know there's Afrikaans, and I know there's very multiple other dialects and such as well, and tribal languages. But I think your major advantage is what the British gave both of our countries, really, is the English language. Wouldn't you agree?
For sure, I'd have to agree with you, because I actually never noticed that before until I started working remotely and started talking to people in different parts of the world and started learning what it actually meant that we were native English speakers, and how I'm at an advantage because there's certain businesses that I can support. And for example, let's say at the moment, my husband actually just secured his first remote client. And he does technical support. He does customer technical support. And so he's on the phone all day long. And he was such a good fit because of his English. You know, he speaks such good English. And what's interesting with such a mixed culture here, it's so diverse. You can't just look at someone and think where they're from, for example. You can't assume that anymore. Maybe 10, 20 years ago, you could look and be like, I know the culture, I know the culture, I know the culture. But now you can't. When he first spoke to his American client, the client thought, you sound almost Irish or Scottish or something crazy. Really? And we were shocked. We were like, we never even thought for a moment that his accent could sound that way to someone else, you know? So it's interesting. It's a really cool aspect, and it opens up some opportunities for me. You know, I could be on the phone for people on their behalf, and it wouldn't matter where I'm based or where I'm from.
Yeah, completely.
Really cool.
Huge advantages to that. So just for our listeners to be aware, Lisa corrects my grammar and spelling on a regular basis. She is very hot on that. for our listeners, I think it's important for everyone to know she edits our podcast. She does all of our write-ups. Moreover, she does all of our social media. I know that's a real passion of yours, is social media. So she does a lot of our outreach programs for our net new clients, being able to bring them into the top of the funnel and add value. She works with our content team to be able to publish content on our website. That's the podcast, obviously, but also our blog content, etc., and all that sort of level of value. And screen calls as well is another facet of your skill set that's quite adaptable. And that's one of the major reasons we're going to be able to scale now going forward, is that, we have that kind of facility. And I think, just to come back to one of your earlier points there about reluctance to, work with VAs and checking people's time. There's two real problems I have with that statement. The first statement, or that state of mind, should I say? The first of those is that you're not really open enough and trusting enough to give another human being your work, because you're just creating a job for yourself, and that's fine. But just realize it's a limiting belief. It is what it is, right? You're only going to get so far if you're not going to spend the time training someone. And even if you are willing to hire somebody and you're going to stand over their shoulder, that person's not going to stay very long. If you're there, like you said, micromanaging is exactly what it is. And nobody wants that. It's all about trusting people and outcomes, quite frankly. If you're not producing the outcome, you're not going to stay, but that person should be there in the first place anyway. Second side of that equation is you just have not invested in technology enough. So I am a big believer. I will go above and beyond. Now, look, granted, I am a tech nerd and I am a computer scientist, and I come from that background, and I have far too many power tools for my own good. That's all true, right? But you can measure and monitor absolutely everything in your business at the drop of a hat. I mean, there are some phenomenal tools out there at the moment that are really, really leading the charge. Things like Gong I've been massively impressed with, which analyzes your calls, picks up on keywords, connects to CRM, and finds out exactly who's closing the most deals, who's coaching, learning from each other, and why, and who's speaking more than anyone else, and what's being said, etc. So that's really to the nth degree. Even beyond that, really sophisticated CRMs, calendar management tools, email analysis tools.
Everything.
It's phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. What would you say in our tech stack, Lisa, could we not do without, from your perspective?
I love that question. Before I answer you, just to touch on your first point there, we actually had a candidate this week that was asked, what culture do they thrive in? And the person said, I need to be trusted and I need to be free. That's how I do my best work. And when I'm micromanaged or someone's looking over me, I'm actually less confident. I make silly mistakes, and I actually am not that great at my job. So just to touch on that one point, what we could not live without. Oh, that's a hard one. That's a really hard one.
All of the stuff, right?
All of it. It's a package deal. It's a package deal. You figure out what needs you have or what your pain points are, and guess what? There's either app or software out there to kind of fix it for you. I can't. Okay, I'll just give it a go. I'll give it a go and I'll choose something. I'm going to say Willow. I know it's new. We've only recently incorporated into our process, but it's brilliant. The feel.
Whose idea was that, Lisa? I forget.
It's brilliant. It gives you a personal perspective on somebody, and also it gives that person the confidence that if they didn't answer their first question directly, they get a second chance to kind of record. And when you're in an interview, you're nervous. You don't get really a second chance. It's either that 30 minutes to an hour that you have, and if you stumbled, it was probably noted, or someone can pick up you were nervous, or and with Willow, people can send through the interview through videos, which is just the coolest thing. Such a time saver. Gives us I feel like an in-depth look at the candidate, and also it gives that person full confidence and full freedom to give their best on every single question, which is just fantastic.
I agree. Yeah, we had the founder of Willow One, Andrew Wood, on the podcast recently as well, and shared similar sentiment.
He's really great.
He really was. He is, and I think that's a game changer for us in terms of scale and being able to deliver candidates in their best light. I have a philosophy about this, and this is coming up kind of more and more recently with me, where I believe with the best clients I've worked with, they give every candidate the best opportunity to shine and the tools and the direction to do that. I find it a challenge when there's kind of a bit of a trickery in the process and folks want to say, oh no, they need to figure it out on their own. I was like, for me, they haven't really thought about it enough. One of the things I see a lot of, clients do, or, potential clients do, is not put enough time into the job description for the folks they want to hire. And you're not really getting a good sense of what you're looking for. So there's two elements of a job description. There's a functional requirement set, which is, you need to have this experience, which is one thing, but then there's a cultural fit, and you need to tell people on that. A lot of the best run companies have a culture code, and they talk about that extensively. They have internal wikis on it, and they have external blog posts on it, and they're very, very clear about what it is they value. So that's kind of one of the things. Where I love Willow is it allows you in your own time to capture what's important to you, right? So, in terms of the best fit answers. So we ask questions, we ask closed questions, and we ask open questions. And often with the open questions that are competency-based and example-based, I would prefer someone think about that and give their best example and have the time to prepare for that, rather than try and catch them out on the spot there and then. And I think what's nice about that is it allows you to do that. So when we're presenting back to our clients, we're able to give them a much more comprehensive screen at scale, and we're able to provide a video answer of all of those questions and a transcribed answer of all of those questions. So we use tools that allow us to achieve that, like Otter.ai. And obviously, Lisa, you are the master and commander of overseeing that process, but it does allow us for a better positioned candidate in a more defined process. And that's been our experience. That's where we're headed as an organization. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree. And listening to the founder on our podcast was really awesome, to hear his perspective, to hear what the challenges were that made them kind of create this. And something that he said that has probably stuck with me is the time that someone spends reviewing a CV. I'm not sure if you remember what his answer was.
I do.
It was 7 seconds. They look at a few details and it's 7 seconds and they move on. So if someone's recruitment process is just sending your CV, your chances are so low. You're going to get looked at for 7 seconds and your CV might go to the bottom of the pile unless something seriously stood out in the first few lines of your CV. So a tool like Willow just changes the game. It gives the candidate a shot on another level. And then also it gives us the chance to just deliver quality work to our clients, Coolest thing ever.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a very, very promising future for us as well. I think in terms of answering the question around tools we can't live without, for me, I think it's Slack. I feel that adds the greatest level of value to our organization. Winton, our COO, brought that to the table. Full disclosure, my wife works there more recently, but it's a phenomenal tool. And what I particularly like about it is being able to add multiple workspaces for our clients so they can interact with us there as well, which is quite a huge advantage. Outside of that, I think G Drive is quite important. I think the documentation we share on our CRM platform is absolutely vital to what we do. And our mass outreach system, the software that we've built, the custom software Winton and myself have overseen, has been absolutely huge for us.
Instrumental,
Tell me about your vision, Lisa, for the future, about where you want to go with your business. I'm very interested to learn about that, because you spoke to me about women empowerment and you spoke to me about having an army of virtual assistants. Talk to me about that, if you would, for a moment.
For sure. There's some really exciting things happening right now. So I'm excited to talk about, I'm always excited to talk about my business. So at the moment, what my current goals is, my short-term goal, I would say, is to earn a rate that I feel I am worthy of, cut down hours. I want to be opened up to do training. That's actually where I think my business is going into. So the last few months, I've had a few people come to me and say, hey, we saw you did this. How did you find your client? Or we saw you speaking about that. Can you tell us more? And then I started doing more and more meetings with women, especially women that were interested in how I started my business. What is a virtual assistant? You know, how do you start this? How do you find people? Why do people trust you? How do you build trust? You know, and it's just started happening more and more and more. And not so long ago, two women actually said to me, listen, we would pay to have a workshop with you to learn about how you've figured out all these things on your own, because they don't have to go through all the troubleshooting that I went through to when I started my business. You know, I can kind of kickstart people and give them the basics of how to start their virtual assistant business. So I'm thinking that I'm going to probably move into training one day. That's a long-term goal for me. I want to empower women to work from home. I want them to be able to create their own paychecks, their own salaries. I want them to build their own relationships. For example, if it's important for a mom to do the school run in the morning, she should be able to do her school run and start work when she gets home. You know, if it's important for a dad to be home every evening for their supper with their family, he should be able to do that. You know, so I want to empower women. Most women don't know that they can do it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
You know, it's women are skilled, right? Everybody has the experience. People have been working from either after university or after high school. So, I mean, that's years and years of developing skills, you know, learning new things, teaching, stepping out of your comfort zone. And they're kind of running the business of themselves. They just don't know it yet, you know, and until someone tells you, we can package everything you've done in your whole working career. We could help you find remote clients and you could work from the comfort of your own home. So I want to enable women to do what I'm doing. So I'd probably go on into training, maybe do a course of what I do and offer that to people. So I think it might be training material, workshops, and maybe a course of how to be a VA or how to start your own remote business.
Yeah, I think you're right. You can do it. That's the whole point. You absolutely can do it. And I think it's a mindset thing. It's nothing to do with anything else. And I think technology has brought us is the ability to engage globally, to work on our own time and our own rules. So my children are a huge part of my life at the moment, and bringing them to and from school is huge for me, having that time. But at the same time, having the ability to build a business in the background, I think is vital for my own headspace, quite frankly, and my own to quench my thirst of ambition. So I think for me, that's really, really important. And it's only facilitated by working with like-minded people. And I've been very fortunate enough to have been exposed to all of that. And I suppose the hardest part of this is just like the hardest part of going to the gym is getting in the car to do it, to drive to the gym. I honestly mean that. It absolutely is. You don't have to be good to get started, but in order to become good, you've got to get started. And, you know, I think that's really the mindset that you need to have. My personal trainer actually, and I have a lot of chats about this. And I said that line to him. He said, "Oh, I'm no good at DIY." And I said that line to him, right? And he went off and bought himself a couple tools. And now he's just had a baby and he's showing me things. He's gone and paneled the entire nursery. He's built a radiator cabinet with mesh on the front of it and put edges on it perfectly, etc. Ripped up the floorboards, redone them. And I was like, there you go. You're the one training people to be their best physical fitness. And that's a mindset thing. And now you can do other stuff just because somebody had a word in your ear. And it's the same for me with personal fitness, right? I need someone to tell me I can do it. And now I know I can do it, right? So I think that's my biggest takeaway. So I suppose for anybody listening to this, I cannot stress the value of firing yourself every day and empowering your business by somebody who I think Lisa, if the most valuable thing that you bring to the table is accountability. I think that's the most invaluable thing that you bring is, you know, the constant questioning. I absolutely love that. It's why are we doing this? Like, why are we doing it this way? Would it be an idea to maybe do it that way? And I'm like, yeah, if you're so right, of course it would. Absolutely. And I can't see the wood for the trees a lot of the time because I'm so in it. I'm like, Ross,
of course,
take yourself out of that for a minute. Take yourself out of that minute for a minute. You're focusing on the wrong problem here. And I think that's the value you bring to the table. So I don't know, you may have some parting words as we round the corner here, Lisa, but you know, that's my personal belief and that's been my experience over the last number of years. I've had the good pleasure of working with you. So thank you
so much, Ross. And I appreciate you pointing out the biggest benefit you see in working with a virtual assistant. And it definitely is accountability. I feel like I've done that for a really, really long time. And it stems from being a personal assistant. It stems from working with a director or CEO, senior managers, or things like that, Like you, they're caught up in the moment. They're caught up in the world. They're caught up in the chaos of getting things done and stepping to the next thing all the time. They don't have a chance to step away and look at the full picture. And I really learned that when I worked at an NGO. I learned what accountability means. And I learned how the higher up people go, well, let's say ranking, when you become like a CEO or you become an executive or a senior manager or something like that, your focus changes. You're one tunnel on one thing, and it's most of the time it's your role and fulfilling that. And what we get to do is we step away. We're observing the entire picture all the time. So that's definitely a strong point. So I appreciate you pointing that out. Thank you. I'm definitely going to use that the next time someone asks me what value I add.
No question. No, absolutely. And I'll tell that story to whoever wants to listen, because that's definitely what I've gotten back from this. I think it's not about being busy. It's about being productive, right? So yeah. I find myself, falling into traps all of the time. And, if you can live with the mantra of always be firing yourself and figuring out what's next, yeah. Then, if you don't have a process, quite frankly, you don't have a business. And I think, I've worked with other recruiters in the past who are good recruiters at recruiting in isolation, yeah. Right? But they're not recruiters at scale. They're there's
a big difference.
Yeah, there's a big difference. And I'm not interested in a recruiter who's a good recruiter. In fact, I would take a recruiter who's a mediocre to poor recruiter who I can scale. I suppose we've built our business on tacit knowledge that I can absolutely train to other folks. I've been in this industry for the last 17 years. I know it backwards, not recruitment now, but tech. And that's where we got our initial credibility and grow it out. But now it's about scale. And you absolutely can do that at scale with just good processes. And I have a very important coaster here, which I know people have seen before. It's not my people, it's my processes. And I it's another one I live by. I think it's very, very true.
Yeah, it is really true, because we can't do it on our own. Nobody can.
No, nor should you try. Nor should you try. Oof. Well, we got through a lot today. I enjoyed every second of it, but then again, I love what we do and we work on together. So I really want to thank you for being a part of the podcast today, Lisa. It's been a pleasure, and I hope our listeners will get as much value from it as I certainly do on a daily basis. So thank you once again for appearing. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Ross. Really cool to be on the side of the table. So thank you for having me. I'm humbled. Thank you.
You'll be on again. There's no doubt about that in my mind. Thanks very much, Lisa.
Thanks.
You've been listening to the Global Tech Leaders Podcast, designed for both established and aspiring career-focused tech rock stars, as well as helping leadership figure out how to speak global in today's multicultural world. For further details, check out sf-talent.com.